So, other than writing TTRPG characters before, do you remember writing any other original character, and particularly what you wanted to say about their backstory?
Hmm. Huh. Can't say I have.
Hmm.
Pretty much everything I made was about like something else.
Mm. Well, what about writing fan fiction? No, people don't usually like to admit they used to write fan fiction. I used to write fan fiction.
I have not written a fan fiction.
All right. Well, I finally have a context for this at this point. I used to write fan fiction about Ranma One Half. That's a thing again.
Really?
Yep. There's just one show every Saturday on Netflix.
Huh.
Well, a lot of things that I used to like before, but I'm not even gonna mention because of problematic creators and whatnot.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like there is a very thin line between like the fan made thing and plagiarism.
Mm-hmm. Well, uh, feet of clay. Well, some people who actually did do plagiarism, so that's not inaccurate.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. It's been a kind of long day for me. Is that I did a little bit of streaming this morning, and that's what I'm going to have to do. Is that with my new work schedule, I'm just going to have to make sure that I make the stream in the morning and the stream at night. Not that I'm complaining. It's just I need to get more motivated.
Yeah, pretty much.
And it was particularly useful that I did actually use that Spirit City Lo-Fi Session software the last time when I was doing the drawing on stream. Is that's an incredibly good program for managing your productivity.
Yeah, that's good.
Mm.
By the way, you also said you have pictures of like the character I'll be using for like this thing for
Right.
like example like good backstory. It's one I've discussed to you about like in the past about like Maxie.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah, Maxie, the homunculus jester.
Did you put that in
thing.
your DM or did you put that in the forum?
I just put it in your DM.
Or you put it in my DM?
Yes.
Hmm. Okay, there it is.
Yes, correct.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And the form as Solstice too, just in case.
Mm-hmm. All right. So let's go ahead and let's play the music.
Yep, let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
This is the story of Brainy the RPG cat, and in many ways it's a very typical story. One day an old man found a stray kitten in a library, and he chose to keep it as a mascot, and to keep him in gentle company. But this was no ordinary old man, for he was Bosch, the high elf headmaster of the Library of Dinah, a very not ordinary library dedicated to the goddess of all living knowledge. And before long, Bosch would learn that this was also no ordinary cat.
Hello.
Learning that the cat was intelligent, the wizard took it upon himself to teach him to read and write, and learn history and the ways of magic. He was quite taken with the lessons he got from games using cards and dice. And soon the cat grew into an adult, a scholar, a full-fledged wizard in his own right, and once and forever one of the most dedicated librarians in Denier. The wizard bestowed upon him a name in the tradition of all cat people. He who astounds with his immediately brilliant ideas. But the library wizards have taken to calling him Brainy the RPG cat. And let me tell you, it hasn't been a bed of roses.
Fearless, feelers, Caddis is the raddest, has skills of the baddest, magic, slinging for status, practically unmatched, runs all of the gamut, in fact, he's a reference games and chatting, bent wizardly hatting, questing, stacking, napping, this cat witty banter, seeking kitty answers, roll 20 to scamper, tune in, and enjoy the ride. Brady, the RPG cat. Brady, the RPG cat.
Right, hello, cats and kittens, felines and felidae, humans and very humans, and every race, class, and subclass. Welcome to another episode of Brainy the RPG Cat. Tonight we're going to be doing a little segment we like to call TTRPG and sometimes Why, and we're also going to be talking about character
Backstories.
Character backstories. So this episode is entitled Don't Kill the Parents. And so that's probably the one tip that everybody knows when it comes to creating a TTRPG character's backstory.
Yeah, exactly. A Bruce Wayne can work, but a Bruce Wayne a Bruce Wayne can be good doesn't mean you should use a Bruce Wayne.
So, even though this is something that somebody actually, this is advice that is always given and people always know. The true creative writing individual is somebody who can, learn how to work around the rules in a way that will still remain entertaining for the people who might potentially be reading it.
Yes, very entertaining.
And so, that is one commonly held opinion when it comes to character backstories. The other one is, well, it doesn't matter as long as all of your other stats in place. You can be anything you want.
Yes, sir.
You could be a 2 foot tall pickle for all we care.
Yeah, you could literally be the funniest shit anyone has ever seen and become Pickle Rick. As long as you have a good backstory.
Yep. And so, everybody, so that's basically the sticking point when it comes to what we're trying to discuss tonight, is that creative writing is a really difficult thing to pin down. Is that, it was, for me, it was always something that I just tended to do, like normally, instinctively. And then, eventually I ended up getting my sheepskin in it. I ended up getting my bachelor's degree in creative writing. But, maybe you can offer a little bit of more insight into this. Is that, what...
Well, yeah, sometimes you need to do, intensive studying and research, and other times you're like me, who could just do it somehow.
You can, what they say in the business, you can pants, which is basically making it up as you go along. And so I heard.
By the way, did you know that pants in the UK actually means underwear, while pants in the US is pants that we know?
Well, I actually did know that.
Well, now you do.
Mm-hmm. Now I know it again. I know it twice.
Yes,
okay.
Because of me.
Mm. So, I heard about a very famous pantser fairly recently, and it was the writer for the manga Chainsaw Man. Are you familiar? Supposedly, he's only making up as
yes.
As opposed to, an anime like One Piece, where I assume that the writer is making up as he goes along.
Well, I'll provide some context where, in this sort of plot, the protagonist, whose dog is actually a demon, makes a deal with this chainsaw demon in order to fight other demons.
Yeah.
And through along the way, they meet other characters, some supporting, some villainous, and other people who are powered by other demons, and so on and so forth.
because that's just the way that everything works at this point. That has a little bit
Yeah.
more to do with world building.
Yeah,
And then you
but
just
what
have
I
to
like
frame
is that
things.
it's pretty consistent, and like you can't understand like oh, this person has a certain power because they made a deal with a certain devil. Like there is like a one that is pretty similar to Chainsaw Man, but with him instead of like chainsaws coming out of his body, it's like sword blades.
And so, what we have to do is we have to take that individual character about the man who is possessed by a chainsaw demon, and then we have to get introspective. We have to talk about what is the motivation to a person who has just been transformed into a half of a chainsaw.
And what is the goal of our protagonist in Chainsaw Man? To
Those-
consensually touch a boob.
Oh wow!
Yes.
Yeah.
But hey, it's a very. But hey, compared to a lot of other animes, this man is a saint.
Well,
But yeah, other than that, he just wants to like make buy since he was essentially so poor. He was selling his own organs in order to make money.
well, maybe anime is not the best example when it comes to creating character backstories. Kind of spilled over
Yeah.
on that one. But at any rate, we're gonna go ahead. We're gonna go into our first video. We are going to look at a video on YouTube by How to Be a Great GM. This is about called Crafting a Strong RPG Character Backstory. 5 questions to consider. Let's go ahead and let's hit play on this.
Yes, but first, would you like to like share your screen with me, Brittany? I cannot
Oh
see.
yeah, okay, forgot about that. All right, let me put that. Let me put that on for you. Okay.
All right, let's see here. All right, yes,
Hello
perfect.
and welcome to this week's episode of How to Be a Great GM. It is Celebrate the Player Month here on How to Be a Great GM, and well, that's exactly what we're going to be doing, is celebrating the player and trying to make your life as a player that much easier. Now, I remember being a player once long ago. As a matter of fact, it was last week when I had the privilege of being a player, and something that we have spoken about on this channel before, and we have explored the topic quite extensively, but one that's worth revisiting is how to make backstories that work for you, but also for your GM. This is the important thing. Now, your GM might not include your backstory in the bigger campaign because it's too daunting, it's too elaborate, whatever the situation is. It can be done in a way that the GM doesn't even want to touch your backstory. And as a GM, it's like there's just too much information here. I don't know where to start. I don't know how to incorporate this. Well, this is what I suggest you do to improve your PC backstory, but also to plunder it for useful GM information that you can incorporate into your game later on. So let's start. Where do we start? Well, very simply, I have a few questions that I make sure to be able to answer whenever I look at my character. The very first question is, where was the character born? And it's not
Uh,
What happened here?
I have no idea. Let me go ahead and refresh. Oh, there it is.
Oh wait, hold on.
This is a complicated question. Who were the guardians of that character? Where and what was the situation like in that space that they were born? Again, this doesn't mean, though, that you have to write out a giant 7-page or 7-chapter backstory. You were born in the town of Gantz. Gantz was known as a slaver town, and as a young child, your terror was of being turned into a slave and dragged away from your family. That's it. That's enough. All you then need to drop in is the name of a guardian or someone who was important to you in your early stages of child development. My mother, bless her soul, is dead, is alive. It doesn't really matter, but you give her a name, and then that's it. You then, if you really want to finesse it, you add in how do you feel about that birth. If I look at my own personal backstory, I was born in a little town in the middle of nowhere, as far away from anywhere as possible. It was an idyllic upbringing. We lived on a farm, I had friends, I was able to roam around and explore the natural world and the beauty that was all around me, and then we moved to a city. But in my childhood, I had a very good friend, and his name was BB, and we ran around all over the place together. I haven't seen him since we left that farm. That's it. That's as simple as it gets. You don't have to do any more. Then you talk about your next step, your education. How were you educated? And what was the influence of that education upon you? Now, when I say education, I'm not just talking about the notion of, well, here's your scholastic education. Where did you learn to read and write? In role-playing terms, we are often in a medieval setting where that wasn't necessarily what you would be taught. I'm also talking about your survival skills. How did you learn to make it on your own? What were your pitfalls? How did you learn to become a baker? Your education does not have to link directly to your occupation or your current adventure class. Why? Because those things change. I remember my education. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I was going to be a dinosaur hunter, a sort of a paleontologist, or a lawyer. Being a filmmaker never even entered into the equation, and being a YouTuber, and certainly out of the realms of possibility. My grandmother, however, always knew that I should be writing and telling stories. So maybe she knew something that I didn't. Nonetheless, my education was in a fantastic school. It was incredibly demanding academically, and the teachers were incredibly encouraging and nourishing. I had an amazing teacher, Mrs. McMichael, who really, really motivated me. I had a whole bunch of teachers, as a matter of fact. So I had a really good experience. Notice how I dropped in a name. I had a really good experience. I enjoyed it. Yes, all of the wonderful things about puberty were going on at the same time, but I don't think that's necessarily important in this particular context. Or maybe it is. But then you can include just a paragraph on that, just a little sentence even on that. Once you're done with that, you then have to talk about your...
And there it is again. It'll
Again?
probably just answer itself again. This is probably an issue that I'm currently having with my pop-up blocker.
First
I
job.
see ad
My
blocker,
first
huh?
job was a disaster, and I resigned after 6 months because I hated the idea of having to work and do all of this.
By the way, Game Night 00 is in chat right now.
I have to work on a Saturday.
Oh,
Yeah,
hey,
I'm
Game Night.
role-playing
Good
on
to
a
see you.
Saturday.
You know, Game Night, of course, is our mutual friend Joe, who is also a player with us on One Shots from the Meowing Portal.
What did your
Yep,
character
essentially,
do
this is Otto
after
in
they
our
got
chat. Hey,
education
Otto.
before they started adventuring? Now, I know some of you are going to go, oh, well, my character started adventuring at the age of 16. That's absolutely fine. What were they destined to do before they became an adventurer? Well, my character was destined to become an adventurer. Okay, why? Why was your character destined to become an adventurer? Why did your character go into the occupation that they were in before their first adventure? That's a very, very important question. Why did your character go? Was it to make money? Was it a family business? Was it because it was all that was available? Most of the time, people will go into occupations, especially in the medieval time period, which suits one of their attributes. Now, most of the role-playing games we have attributes and skills, so you would most likely go to an occupation that tick boxes most of the skills that you currently possess. So if it is wielding a sword, possibly you would have become a blacksmith or perhaps a page to a knight in the hopes of becoming a knight one day. So there is that kind of journey. But putting in your education and your occupation and how you felt about it, that's important. I hated it. I thought it was boring. It was dull. I didn't want to be a Cooper. I wanted to be a Fletcher or a this or that. Always putting that little sentence and a name. Always adding in a name. My first job, I was working in a hardware store as a paint consultant. What color people should paint their houses, then I had to go and mix the paint. It was awful, but I had a friend there, Hugo, who he really got stuck in and really did all of that handiwork stuff, which I admired him for that. But like I said, 6 months and I was out of there. Way too much real life for me. Anyway, and then finally, it's only 5 questions that you have to ask. What caused you to become an adventurer? Why are you leaving this job that you hate or that you love?
Ack. I hope the rest of them is not going to be as bad as this.
Yeah, ads are dick.
Mm-hmm.
But which you have.
Yeah, Game Night 00 says his YouTube is on my subscription list.
To wait for adventures to come along and bribe them some coins. So
Yeah, I also have YouTube Premium, pretty much.
That's not a real, I mean, that's not an occupation really that one aspires for. Anyway, so why did you leave? Was it for money? Was it for love? Was it because you were disgraced? Was it because you just wanted a change of scenery? Bearing in mind, picture yourself as this character going, oh, I live in quite a nice town. I had quite a nice upbringing. I have a fairly decent job that pays well. I have a guardian. I have friends from school. I have, a work colleague, and we barbecue on the Saturdays. Give all of that up to pick up a sword and go into some grimy old basement to kill monsters. Why would I do that? And it could very well be that there's wanderlust. Nonetheless, there has to be a reason for your initial decision. And after you have had your first adventure, I would strongly advise you to go back to your character sheet and then to say how you feel, and by you I mean your character, how your character feels about their first adventure. It was amazing. I was terrified. I was so scared. I was this, I was that. But we overcame this thing and we killed all those giant rats, and the barkeeper was so appreciative. He gave us 5 gold. It would take me 3 months to earn 5 gold, etc., etc., etc. And so what then happens is your backstory becomes a living document. You don't have to fill out, again, giant pages of notes and things. Just a paragraph, just a sentence, dropping a name here, dropping a name there. Trust me, after the campaign wraps up, you've got this backstory, but it's this wonderful story of your character. And all it's done is taken you a few moments. Now, there's a huge benefit to doing this, by the way, is that you can then look back at your backstory, which originally was this dead document that you created and then forgot about. Now you can look back and remember when that first adventure where we went and killed the gnolls? And you've got a little note in there on how you felt about it. That's really powerful. Now, if you share that information with the GM can go, hey, I can use this. Oh, I remember that. I see here that the player really hated that adventure because it was so tough and so difficult, and they were glad that it was over. I can use that to not ever do it again. So you end up with this wonderful living document rather than a dead document, as well as the capacity to remember and recall the adventures, but also how you felt about those adventures. And that creates a really well-rounded space, as far as I'm concerned, not only for the GM to pull out those names, to pull out some feelings, to pull out some locations from that particular backstory that you've created, but to continuously use that document moving forward as well. That's my thought on how to improve your backstory and create a living story, which continues to grow adventure after adventure.
Okay, so what will you say you took away from Guy's concept of putting together a character backstory?
Well, I think these rules are these questions are like a very good thing to keep in mind and to really make your character or background a bit better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, it's just really, an overview and a certain amount of outline that, goes very strongly along with an individual's motivations. Is that
That
people
is
are
correct.
wanting beings, people want things. And so,
Yep.
I mean, he goes over an outline that's simple enough that's, somebody's bored with his job. And then he decides to come with an adventure. But even that, there is a motivation that you can say exists within that concept.
Yep. Essentially.
So this is really does bring a very important point as far as my concept for creating an RPG character is concerned, is that you have to look significantly inward. People are motivated from within to do things. And so it's that you got to make sure that, if you're writing a character backstory, it's not necessarily about, how they were affected by outside forces. And once again, this is where we go to don't kill off the parents.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
Don't kill off the parents.
I mean, well, yes and no, but we'll be splitting hairs at that point. The more
Yeah,
important
but
thing
it's
is to know is
the
that
name of the rule.
mhm.
Well,
the, the better question is, how did the death of an individual's parents make them feel? Just to use that as an example.
yeah, and it makes sense to look inward, even with yourself, while making the backstory, because with our OCs, there's always something being put in from ourselves being put into this OC.
Hmm. So let's go ahead and let's move on. So this is from Enter the Dungeon. This is only like maybe about a 3-minute video. This is a site that usually does um, tabletop based drama, but so this is probably going to be a dramatic act that continues to prove the point of what is what you actually need in order to make a better backstory.
Yep, different kinds of advice.
Mm-hmm.
New D&D players struggle with writing backstories for their characters, which is why I always give out this one tip that I think makes backstories 10 times better. And that tip is write character concepts and not events. Let me see if you recognize this pattern. You are writing a character backstory and you're centering it around an event. Maybe your parents died, maybe you're looking for an item, an artifact, whatever. This can lead to problems when you are going down a longer campaign. Because for me, as a DM, if you're wanting me to incorporate like something from that character's backstory into the campaign, I'm almost shoehorned into having it relate to that particular event. And we got two problems here. The first option is that you just handle whatever the event in your character's backstory is in a normal amount of time. But when that event is solved, your backstory has run out of fuel. That big driving force that you've written in for your character is not really there. Or two, I artificially extend the length of that backstory event so that it gets solved close to the end of the campaign. But for large portions of the campaign, you are just going to be hopping from one point to another, not really making much progress on the event. Obviously, you can write backstories using events as their basis, but you run into these problems. That's what I'm saying. So that's why I encourage players writing their backstories off of concepts. Like a concept being, what would happen if I took a character and made it so that they could not feel, let's say, joy? How could I roleplay that character? How could I interact with them throughout 20 levels potentially of a campaign? Maybe I want to play a warlock that is indebted to an evil patron, but they're lawful good, and I want to explore that dynamic, that concept. Because as a DM, when I see concepts in your backstory, I can more easily play with those. Like, let's take the lawful good warlock and their chaotic evil patron. I'm going to be putting situations down, moral dilemmas, where the warlock's going to have to choose between appeasing their patron or doing what they know is morally right. And you know what? I as a DM can play off that dynamic, and you as a player can play off that dynamic for far longer than if you just wrote events. And you know what? Here's the secret sauce. When you mix both backstory writing methods, create a character that has both events and concepts in it, so that then after you mix everything together, that character has like hard, concrete things that you can accomplish and that your DM can use, but also these concepts, so that when you're not handling your events within your backstory, your DM can still interact with it because there are concepts littered throughout the backstory. Basically, just remember that putting concepts in your backstory is 10 times more powerful than an event. And if you want more tips like this, may I suggest this video right here, and thank you for entering the dungeon.
All right. So I think there's just a single very salient point made in this video, and it's that,
Yes, I
yeah,
agree.
probably something that I know that I do very frequently, and something that I also know that Mimi does very frequently, is that when we create characters based on the initial concept first. And so, it's definitely how I created Brainy, is just to come up with a particularly clever way in order to add a wizard to a Dungeons and Dragons group because they needed a wizard.
Yeah, same with my
Um,
character. Like, I took the already present concept of a changelings, and I decided, what if I were to make that animalistic, both figuratively and literally?
mm. So yeah, so that's basically, that's really, we have a general idea of what we're trying to be playing, is that we have a character that possesses a specific race and a specific class. I got mine from Volo's Guide to Monsters, and
And mine from my affinity for warlocks
mhm. and
and horror
yeah.
stuff.
hmm And so it's really, we have the base idea for a character, but then what we do is we play around with just the very internal concepts of that character, and just what the motivations would be.
Yeah, exactly. Like Cube, he knows he is scary a lot of the time, but he always wears this costume to try to look cuter.
hmm just try to look more human while walking around in certain groups among certain
Yeah, or at
people.
least look way less disturbing.
Mhm. And so, a more general warlock story would be, well, okay, so they are terribly disfigured as a result of having a specific patron, etc. You know,
Yeah, you're that or making a deal with the devil, blah blah blah, yada yada.
and so
Uh,
we
But
we like the question why here, but I'd also like to bring up how. You know, you're disfigured by your patron. How? And then that's what you have to answer in order to put the originality into your specific type of work.
yes, exactly. With Cubic, yeah, he was pretty much like chosen for a role of a warlock because like Mazel thought didn't have anything left, and well, Cubic was the last bit of remains, like pretty much escaped to his home when the ice rage happened.
Mm-hmm. And so that is precisely it. This is our other large takeaway. What was our first takeaway? Is that we take
Uh,
away, yeah, we have to look at what a character's motivations are. Secondly, we gotta, answer the very specific questions about how why the character is the way they are.
yeah, yeah, and what this would be is that like since like Mazeltov wants QA to gather more followers, because QA sees this as an opportunity to actually make friends.
Mhm. So Game Night 00 in chat is saying, just bring all the edge into your backstory. Boom, done. I am Lord Edge of Edgelord.
Lord Edge.
Yeah, his ability in order to be equal parts dark and moody and awesome and cool throughout the entirety of the event. Some form of paladin, I would be assuming. And he also says I pulled Otto's original motivation as him questioning his autonomy and if he's a real boy, like Lieutenant Commander Data. Already,
Yep, someone like Pinocchio.
mhm, a popular existing character in lore, and said don't bring up Laura because Laura is actually Data's evil twin brother.
Yeah.
hmm But really, and sometimes, yeah, we do take ideas from concepts like television that we watched. A significant part of Brainy, actually comes from like a combination of Dragon Ball Z, the familiar Archimedes from the Sword and the Stone, and well, what are some of the popular things that you like to use?
Uh, Brady, you're kind of breaking up a bit. I can't
Yeah,
really hear you without you cutting up.
sorry about that. So, what are the just concepts that you got from like TV and film that are motivate your character creation?
Well, one was a Mimikyu, the Pokemon. That pretty much hid itself under a costume, so it could like be more cute. It has a lot of envy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And another one was actually like My Little Pony's just depiction of changelings is like monstrous bugs shaped like ponies that disguise themselves and feed off of love.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, is that so when you're just engaging in any form of creative writing, is that you just have to have at least a sentence or two that helps you to fully understand what an individual character's motivation is. And that's precisely what we're asking you to do with your tabletop character. You know, keep it
Yes,
concise
that is
enough for the DM, but also make sure that it's meaty enough that you actually have character motivations and concepts of what your character is generally going to try to do.
yeah. So make sure it has enough flair,
Mm-hmm. All right.
like what we're about to learn with this video made by Ginny D. And
Yeah,
Ginny
Jenny
D's how to
D.
give a character a backstory. And why are
Mm-hmm.
you scrolling down so much?
Well, this was a video that I was actually going to watch, but actually I'm going to open up another video because it looks a little bit more relevant. Um,
My character's parents are both dead. Oh, yeah? Well, my character killed her parents. By accident. It haunts her. What is this? Amateur hour? My backstory's way better than that.
Classic start.
Did she make a mistake that caused her true love to die? She watched her children drown, unable to stop it. Ooh, was she hideously tortured for years and years? Nope. She grew up in a charming little village with 4 sisters. They have a family-run flower shop. And then it burned down with her family inside. No, they're fine. I don't get it. How is she traumatized then? Oh, she's not traumatized. She's actually pretty happy. She started talking to flowers and realized she had a natural aptitude for druidry. Now she's on a mission to learn how to use her powers. That way she gets traumatized on the road, during the campaign. Ooh, that's actually brilliant. Can I change mine?
Skinny die. Probably.
Hey,
one of
you
my
mind pausing?
favorite
I
ones.
wanna,
And
like,
start
add
by
in my
saying
own
that I
little
have
spiel
absolutely
here.
nothing against tragic backstories.
right
Those
here.
of you who are
All right.
Yeah, pause.
Mhm.
Like, essentially, what that pretty much one sentence is, it pretty much to summarize what you should strive for when making a character backstory.
Mhm.
Leave some amount for them to get traumatized while during the journey. See, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
That's the
Mhm.
big thing.
I mean, a good example
Like,
for this from popular culture would probably be Rick and Morty. I mean, never mind
yep,
the
exactly.
pickle Rick bit that I did at the very beginning of this, but it's just the
Yep.
character of Rick and Morty is that somebody who is completely normal and motivated in normal ways, involved with a mad scientist, and more often than not, those situations just kind of end up leaving a strong, indelible mark on him.
Yep, all over the series, like you can see like suitable like scars from such things that might have happened in the past, like on all their sci-fi adventures.
Hmm.
Yeah, not
And
just
so,
impacts them, but it also impacts their family, their friends, pretty much everything else. And that's what makes a backstory better.
hmm
Like, sure, you can have like some bit of a bad, like sure you can have like a moderate amount of bad in the backstory, but you got to leave enough for it to be able to develop on the road.
hmm is
All right.
that?
Anyway,
Hmm. All right.
what?
familiar with my
Yeah.
D&D character Aisling will know that I have dabbled in tragedy myself. I have a video all about her and I will link it in the cards. The common argument for tragic backstories is a pretty good one. It basically says that happy, well-adjusted people don't usually become adventurers, and I think there's some merit to that. An object at rest tends to stay at rest, and if nothing pushes you out of your happy, comfortable life, a lot of people will simply stay there. But as with all writing, any rule can be broken as long as you're doing it knowingly and intentionally. And I love a challenge, so today I want to talk about how to make non-tragic backstories that are still compelling. Oh wait, first, something new and interesting. A disclaimer. Get it? It's sarcasm. Communicate with your DM and don't be an asshole. Assholes can use literally anything to be shitty to their table mates, including backstories, so just like don't do that.
Yes. Don't.
Yeah, also the video was kind of breaking up. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Okay? Okay.
Okay.
So what does
Okay.
a backstory actually need? I just used the word
Yeah, tell us.
compelling, and I want to clarify something. That word means something different here than it would if you were, say, writing a novel. You're not trying to compel an audience. Instead, your character's backstory needs to be compelling primarily to you, and secondarily to your DM. If you and your table would enjoy a happy-go-lucky character who's adventuring because they got bored on their family farm, or because they saw a cool bird once and want to find it again, more power to you. As a writer, I understand that it can be hard to let go of the compulsion to write your character as if for an audience. This is me giving you permission to write for your table and no one else. That said, there are a few elements that most D&D characters' backstories should probably have. Something special. If you compare a level 1 character's stats to the official stats for a commoner, you will immediately notice that level 1 adventurers are stronger. They have more proficiencies, more hit points, and unless you rolled very poorly, higher scores for the majority of their attributes. That's because adventurers are not commoners, not even in the first session. Something makes them special. What is that something for your character? Do they have natural gifts? Have they already been through some kind of training? These are questions that your backstory should probably be able to answer. A reason. Your character needs some kind of reason to leave whatever they were doing before and start adventuring with your party. This could take nearly infinite forms, and we will talk about this later in the video, but this is probably the main thing to keep in mind when working on backstory. Material for your DM. Not every DM is going to be interested in pulling in backstory elements, but if yours is, it's a good idea to give them something to work with. Maybe it's people from your past that you might run into again, or a secret that your character wouldn't want revealed. You don't need to spell it out for your DM. In fact, most will probably want the freedom to decide for themselves how to involve your character's history in the campaign. But the more details you can give your DM, the easier it'll be for them to tie it to the game. You will note that tragedy is not on this shortlist. While many people use tragedy as their character's reason, there are plenty of reasons to go adventuring that aren't as dire as avenging their dead father or something. Here are 4 alternatives to consider. Why not try centering your character's backstory on a mystery? Here are a few examples. Maybe your character discovered some mysterious item, like an artifact that needs to be returned or destroyed. Let's say you recently got married and your wedding gift from your late grandmother was a chest of tarnished silver cutlery. The chest has a false bottom, and beneath the forks and knives, you find a crumbling ancient map. Was this perhaps the gift that your grandmother actually wanted you to have? You're determined to follow it and find out. Or maybe your character has spent their whole life wondering about some mystery, like what became of their mother's nomadic tribe after all, or why they've always had an unusual scar. Imagine that you were born with stark white hair and natural magical powers to a family of dark-haired farmers. On your 18th birthday, you have a vision of an old woman who looks like you, standing in the waters of the ocean that you know lies many leagues to the north. You think maybe this woman can tell you why you're different and what it means. Perhaps your character's life was perfectly normal until they received some sort of mysterious letter or stumbled into some mysterious circumstance. For example, several of your friends saw a man who looked exactly like you stumble into the local tavern last night, covered in blood. He grabbed a barmaid, whispered something about the prophecy of the time-lost winter, and then fled into the darkness. Who was he? What is this prophecy, and what does all of it have to do with you? Mystery plotlines like these do double duty. They establish why your character is off on an adventure trying to solve this mystery, plus they give your DM the chance to figure out what the resolution of that mystery might be.
All right. Well, in the intervening time that the video is going to take to come back on, we can certainly discuss
This one seems kind of...
the concept of
What?
adding an element of mystery to your character's backstory.
And I actually have a really good example of this because this is actually the main focus in like a few of our episodes of the
Mhm.
Meowing Portal,
Yes.
and that was pretty much that Cube is quite literally one of a kind.
Mhm.
Like nobody in like Metaluna had really actually seen like something like Cube,
Mhm.
an actual Arthrophae, and like to the point where everyone assumed that he was like a changeling before it was found out that no, he was actually an Arthrophag, and not just because he's like an incredibly rare or like a probably just now being officially discovered race. Is that he also had a bit of a thing where he's also pretty rare as in he's albino.
Mhm. Is that he's different within his own kind, but in a way that is completely um, bereft of concept to anybody that he ever met on the outside world.
Yeah,
Because
exactly. Outside of the bear herons and where he was pretty much raised by giant spiders, this would be seen as something like a complete anomaly, like something that should not exist, or something has got to be confused. Something is wrong. Like, is this thing sick?
Mhm.
But no, it's just this thing is actually a fully grown arthrophag.
Yep.
And
Mm-hmm.
not to mention that even though he's pretty much closest to an arachnid, he does not have the ability to.
I'm sorry, you broke up just there. He doesn't have the ability to. Uh-oh.
Yeah, he cannot make webbing.
Oh, all right. Yeah. And so, yeah, there's just the initial concept of the backstory that he didn't have the ability to make webbing along with his fellow Arthrophae. So he went to the real world, but the real world is a place where nobody has even seen his species before.
And yeah, so that's another reason why Cube has his costume, you see, so people won't like, freak out when they see him. And for other like soon to be revealed reason is to like cover up his appearance
Mm-hmm.
and like what he was evolved to do.
Yeah.
Oh,
All right. So let's go ahead and let's move on to ambition.
of obvious to me, but very few people seem to actually use it to motivate their characters' adventures, and that is ambition. What better reason to leave their comfortable home and do risky, extreme work than in pursuit of some lofty goal? Maybe your character wants to achieve something, to prove themselves. They want to be the best hunter their village has ever produced and take down an adult dragon. Or they want to be selected to act as a spy for the crown and need to become an expert agent in order to do so. Your orc clan chooses their ruler through hand-to-hand combat, and you have always dreamed of being the next leader. So you're off on a quest to hone your combat prowess and will only return when you're the strongest and most deadly version of yourself that you can become. Or perhaps your character wants to be famous and achieve renown. They're tired of making tonics and charms for villagers. They want to be an incredibly powerful wizard who can shape the course of politics and history. They want to be the most famous bard anyone has ever seen, welcome in taverns and royal courts both. For example, you're an artificer who knows you have better invention ideas than anyone, but no one here recognizes your genius. Only by traveling the world, making connections, and showing off your work can you achieve the fame that you deserve. I do think it's a good idea to ask yourself why your character has these ambitions, because there might be something a little deeper there that you can explore. But also, there doesn't have to be. Your character is allowed to just be ambitious, as a personality trait. If your character has some sort of skill or expertise that they want to acquire, they may not be able to acquire it at home. They might leave home to undertake some sort of training. Maybe your character needs to travel to a training facility or school in order to complete their education. Any number of things could happen on their way there, or maybe there are multiple different locations where their training needs to happen, like Aang traveling around and learning different types of bending. Let's say you're a draconic bloodline sorcerer, and in order to gain full mastery over your powers, you need to visit and train under 3 different ancient dragons. These dragons are scattered across the world and live in deadly landscapes, so it's important that you have a party to accompany you. Or perhaps their skills need to be learned on the road. A cleric might be sent on a mission to spread the good word of their god and convert new followers. Maybe you're a druid whose circle has sent you on a traditional coming-of-age journey in which you travel all around the world cataloging beasts until you've built a library of 100 creatures you can wild shape into. When this journey is complete, you are tested, and then you receive the official title of Master Druid. This could very easily cross over with the ambition concept, because achieving your ambitions is often accompanied by some sort of self-improvement.
Okay, so just make a break here. Just I want to say thank you, Pineapple Cat 530 for rating with a party of 1. Thank you and welcome
Hey, thanks,
into the
Pineapple.
stream.
Thanks, Pineapple Cat.
If your character doesn't have a good reason to leave their home and start an adventure, maybe someone else can give them one. A
Is this
third
really
party
great for you to
sending your
join
character
us?
on a quest is a great way to get even a reluctant character to step outside of their comfort zone. I'm looking at you, Bilbo Baggins. Maybe they need to retrieve an item stolen from their family or
Damn it,
tribe
Bilbo.
or organization, or go fetch an item that someone else needs. Your mother sold her treasured
Well,
family
you know, he
ring
went on
years
a
ago
quest.
during
Why did he
lean
go on a
times and
quest?
has
'Cause
just
Gandalf
learned that it
asked
was
him to.
enchanted. She sends you to go track it down and bring it back to your
Fair
bloodline
enough.
where it belongs. Or your temple has just learned
know,
of a newly discovered
you saw
artifact
that he was
once
a
belonged
thief,
to the
even
early
though
followers of your god. You've been
nobody
sent on
could
a
have
pilgrimage
possibly
to
imagined
retrieve
that
it
he
and
was
bring
a
it back
thief.
to the temple where it can be preserved and hallowed. Or perhaps your character owes a
But
debt
he's a wizard,
and now
'cause
needs
so
to
he knows
repay
better.
it. They made a deal years ago and
You're a
promised
wizard,
someone a
Limbo.
favor, and now that person is cashing their favor
You're
in.
what?
Imagine you went to a prestigious magic school and you never understood how your parents were able to afford your entry. But at your graduation, an ancient sorcerer appears and tells you that now that your education is complete, you owe him a year of service, fetching ingredients and running errands for him. Maybe your character is already someone who does odd jobs for pay, and they are suddenly sent on a much bigger job than normal, perhaps escorting a person from one place to another, or fetching or delivering a valuable item over a long distance. And of course, for clerics, paladins, and warlocks, their god or patron can command them to undertake a quest anytime. Look, if you want your character to be wrestling with deep trauma or filled with deep-seated guilt, that is your choice. Tragic characters can be interesting, moving, cathartic, and dare I say it, even fun to play, but I don't like the idea of anyone feeling boxed in creatively, so if you aren't into tragic backstories, you shouldn't feel like you're required to write one. Have you ever written a character with a happy backstory? I would love to hear all about them in the comments. Also,
Okay, well, there's another good question.
Yes, and I vote we talk about your character since we already spent quite a bit of time talking about mine. You know, like Brady, the
Mhm.
cat.
Well, I mean, Brady's story is effectively that he is he is just adopted, well, at first as a pet cat by a group of wizards called the Denarians, who are the keepers of a library of all human knowledge.
Who includes Bosch.
Mhm. Including Bosch, who is his a master, and so
Or a
that in
mentor.
itself
Either
takes
one.
on a double meaning because you have him as a master because he's his pet cat, but also master because he's his wizard's apprentice. And
Yes.
mhm. So it's really that Brainy often has to go out because he has to do something in order to prove himself on behalf of the Denarian wizards. And so I've got some previous backstories and things that I'm going to flesh out in comic book and in game book form that basically outline, the adventures he was initially on. But when the group meets him, he was already, been quite seasoned by very specific events that had happened to him. He's 40 years old, and he's settling well into, being a senior and an authority figure in magic itself. So, unlike a lot of what these things have been saying, I do actually have, some very specific events that happen on in Brady's past that eventually need to be fleshed out in very lengthy pieces of media on its own. But
Yes, that is correct.
but I still have the very simple premise: is that Brady is a wizard because he was found in a library by Bosch and he was raised by him.
Yep, that essentially in a sanctuary full of a place that's already full of wizards.
hmm And so as
And
far
also, I should probably also like point out how Brainy is like far different from others of his own realm, aka the woodland critters, as I've coined
Mhm.
them.
Well, okay, so yeah, initially we had the answer to the mystery of where Brady has come from by saying that he's one of the pure tongue, just a member of people in the realm of the pure tongue, which is basically contains the tree of all life, which people can use in order to actually ascend into godhood.
Yeah,
So,
but essentially most of the residents there are like pretty much, if not all of them, are pretty much like talking animals,
mhm,
like in a same vein as Brainy. Only these guys are practically just like if you took them right out of a movie and like they were obsessed with nothing but frolicking and rainbows and singing.
mhm, is that the pure tongue seem a little bit too chipper compared to brainy, and that's really
Yeah,
just
and I like that.
in discussion of like motivation. It's really the fact that once you do become an intelligent person, that the standardization of an individual's own culture starts to become a little bit strange to them because they've since asked questions about it and they've since come to their own conclusions about it. But there's also just a completely different layer to Brainy's backstory, and it's effectively that he is made in the form of Dinah, the goddess of all knowledge, who also just happens to be a semi-anthropomorphic cat who lives in a cottage and bakes cookies.
Yeah, remember that we met her once when we had to like pretty much really had to power up ourselves,
hmm
I believe, at some point. But
Yeah.
yeah, we pretty much met Brainy's mom, who gave us a little pep talk.
hmm So a lot of this came from the story of Denier, which was a Dungeons and Dragons god who, well, once again, yeah, he's the patron of all knowledge. But because I didn't need to make this a little bit more original over time, I did say that okay, so uh, Denier is actually goddess, and actually her name is Dinah. Dinah comes from Alice in Wonderland, and
A
so.
similar vein of the woodland critters.
hmm And so, Mimi also just happens to be a really big fan of Alice in Wonderland. So,
Yes, that's me. I
any
would know.
motivations that exist within. And, since we've created all these characters, we've also, drawn some significant parallels between ourselves. The biggest metaphor I like to use is the Wizard of Oz. Is that our four party members, Marin, Otto, QB, and Brainy, are literally Dorothy, the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, and the Cowardly Lion.
Yeah, that would make sense.
hmm And so, I had recently put that in an image that was going to be plugging the upcoming manga, but yeah, we're moving slightly back on that, and then we're going to come up with some new preview
Well, I
material
for one would
next.
like to see that.
hmm And I, for one, would like to just go back and see the other Guinea Die video that I had set up. So we're going to do that.
Yes, correct.
hmm
And personality, because personality is important.
Yes. Oh,
Uh,
Someone who was wondering if I had any advice on giving characters Hey friends, Ginny D here. I got an email the other week from someone who was wondering if I had any advice on giving characters unique personalities so that they think and act differently from each other, even when they're played by the same person. And you know what? I do. For some people, creating characters with different personalities might come really naturally. But for others, it can be a skill that could use developing. Many roleplayers struggle with creating and playing multiple characters that think and behave differently from each other. If you're one of those people who worries that your characters are all kind of bleeding into each other, this video is for you. I am still relatively new to tabletop role-playing games. I've only been playing D&D for about 2 years, but I've been a writer for my whole life. I've written multiple embarrassing but complete manuscripts. I spent my entire youth doing text-based roleplay, and I even got my college degree in writing. And developing characters is just as key to writing fiction as it is to roleplaying. So today, I just want to explore a few tactics and tools for how to create characters with unique personalities. Let's dive in. This might seem like a weird question, but I think it's worth examining what a personality actually is before you start trying to create one. There are a lot of things that can be mistaken for personality, like a list of traits, or a backstory, or a motivation, or really liking the movie Fight Club. None of those things are a personality. A personality on a basic level is the combination of internal and external content.
Okay, but how did Fight Club actually make you feel? You know, that's where that second.
I have no idea. I never saw it. The most I've seen is like Family Guy gags.
All right then.
Text. Your personality is what you think and what you do. Let's break that down a little. When I say internal, I'm talking about what's going on in someone's head. How does your character approach the world? What is their perspective? What informs their choices and their thoughts? This includes their mindset, like are they optimistic or pessimistic? This includes their beliefs, not just religious, but what they believe about the world, the story that they tell themselves. Do they believe that love always finds a way, or that bad people will get what's coming to them, or that no one can change their destiny? This can also include any misconceptions they hold or lies they might believe. When I say external, I'm talking about their actions, what they do. This is about how they interact with the world. Are they shy or talkative? Do they take risks or are they more cautious? Do they crack jokes or are they serious and straight-laced? Are they kind to the people around them or cruel or even just disinterested? Maybe this will line up really cleanly with what's in their head, or maybe it'll be very different. Not everyone acts in accordance with their beliefs. Contrast between the internal and the external can actually be really interesting to play with. The concept of a personality can be nebulous and hard to pin down, and that's because a real person's personality is made up of a million different factors developed and discovered over a lifetime. I mean, it's right there in the word personality, the nature of personhood, what makes you a person. When it comes to fictional characters, you don't need them to be a whole person. I mean, they can never be a whole person, but the more personality that you can create and imagine for them, the more unique and real your characters will feel. Now that we know what a personality is, let's talk about how to construct one. I have 3 different methods that I want to outline in this video today. These are not the only ways to create a personality, and you may reach a point where you don't need these kind of training wheels anymore, but they're great guidelines for starting to learn this skill. So unless you're starting from absolute zero, you probably already have at least one big thing that you know about your character. Maybe it's a backstory thing, like your character's mother died of a terrible illness, or maybe it's a major character trait, like your character can see ghosts that no one else can see. If you start with a big thing like that, you can sort of work backwards to develop all the little things that make up a personality that matches up with that big thing. Think of those major character-defining features as fabric, and that fabric is made up of a ton of tiny threads. If you can decide what a bunch of those little threads are, you can create a personality that's rooted in backstory, but isn't necessarily an obvious result of it. Let's try an example together. Say you have a character, Corwin, and he has the soldier background. You've decided that he grew up poor and joined the military to take some of the burden off of his family. That's backstory, but that's not personality. However, we can use it to develop personality. Remember, the same backstory could lead to tons of different personalities. Not every soldier has the same personality. Let's pull one thread together. Let's ask ourselves, how did being in the military affect Corwin's personality? How did it affect him internally and externally? Here's one possible answer. Growing up in the military has made him coarse and thick-skinned, quick to scuffle but difficult to offend. Being in constant physical peril meant that he never really learned to pay attention to his feelings, let alone talk about them. He tends to deflect with humor, often the kind of inappropriate humor that was common in the barracks. He depended on the support of his military unit, and once he gets comfortable with his party, they will receive his unwavering loyalty and trust. That's one possible way to answer the question of how being in the military affected Corwin's personality, but it's not the only way. Here's another way to answer that exact same question with a totally different personality. Corwin grew up in the military, but his country was at peace, and he didn't see any actual battle. He rose through the ranks quickly, which distanced him from foot soldiers, and instead meant that he kept the company mostly of high-ranking officers. This has left him disciplined and stiff, very respectful of hierarchy and authority. He relies on routine and may feel unsettled without it. Since his combat training was so formal, he's a well-practiced swordsman, but completely unprepared for any dirty fighting techniques. In fact, he gets upset when people don't fight fair. This version of Corwin grew up in the military too, but he is a completely different person. There are a million ways to interpret how growing up in the military might affect someone. And while you may know that all of these things stemmed from Corwin's soldier background, it isn't necessarily obvious that the first Corwin is difficult to offend or that the second Corwin prefers routine because of his background. There are a million little threads like this that you can pull. How does Corwin feel about his family? Does he feel a sense of duty to them? Does the memory of them keep him going? Is he resentful of their inability to care for him in his childhood? And how has this affected the way that he treats relationships now? The best way to identify all of these tiny threads and start unraveling the whole personality is to give yourself a lot of space and time to just pick at it. I like to open up a document and just write a bunch of bullet points. I highlight stuff, I move stuff around. Sometimes I try a few different angles on something before I settle on what feels right. This is a really exploratory, free-form method of developing a personality, and you need to make sure to create space for that if you want it to be effective.
You remind me of the vault.
What vault?
The vault with the magic.
What magic?
The magical items.
Which one?
These ones.
Oh.
You remind me of the vault. I saw this new book in a Kickstarter campaign.
Well, now this is the way to advertise something.
It's called the vault.
Hell
for
yeah, we had
tabletop
like a
RPG.
a song and a bit of a musical performance with the Muppets.
And a lot of, sock puppets, not really Muppets.
Yeah.
Scrolls and tomes,
Weapons and cloaks.
potions and armor.
I mean, this is one of the things that I really like about Kitty Pie is that I think she really keeps the discussion as interesting as she possibly can.
Yeah, and really fun.
Vault, magic vault, magic vault, magic vault, magic vault, magic for 5e. Pledge today.
For your copy.
Let
Pledge
me
on
see.
Kickstarter today for your copy of Vault of Magic, a book of more than
This was 3
800
years
magic
ago, so
items
it's
and
more than
rolling
likely
tables
that book
compatible
is
with
just
5th
out
edition
in
D&D.
bookstores now.
It's available in both print and
Yeah, most
digital
likely.
form, including Roll20, Fantasy Grounds, and the brand new 5e platform.
I just love Labyrinth so much. Well, don't we all?
If the first method was sewing
Yeah.
your
Great
own
movie.
clothes, this method is buying a t-shirt
Amazing
off the
movie.
rack. This is a quick and dirty method to basically just select a pre-made personality and apply it to your character. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think this method is lazy or bad. It's a little less freeform, but for some people that might be really helpful. So what am I talking about when I say pre-made personalities? Well, in real life, we try really hard to categorize people by personality in a lot of different ways. So in fiction, we can take one of those categories and then use it as a sort of a framework for a character's personality.
Yes, yes.
Basically, using it in reverse of the way it's intended. There are lots of these categories that you can use. For example, astrological signs. What does it supposedly mean to be a Leo? They're creative and
But the
passionate,
person
but
calling
can
you that
also
is
be
stupid.
stubborn and self-centered. They're natural leaders, but they hate being ignored. You can complicate this even further by picking rising signs and moon stuff.
I have a tendency to believe that, to not really believe in astrology at all, but that is also the trait of a Taurus.
I don't know
Just
anything
saying.
about astrology.
Nice one.
Other personality categories might be things like Hogwarts houses
By the
or
way,
Myers-Briggs
completely
types.
unrelated
I
note, I
especially
am
like
a
the
Pisces.
Myers-Briggs type indicator, or MBTI, for this because it gives us 4 really distinct dualities. So there are 16 different combinations of types, which just gives us a lot more creative flexibility. For example, one of the MBTI pairs is thinking versus feeling. A thinking character may lean on logic. They might be honest even when it's not kind. In contrast, a feeling character may really trust their gut. They think it's important to be compassionate. Both characters could be very intelligent. This isn't about being smart versus being emotional. Instead, it's asking which of the two options the character relies on when making decisions. Imagine a scenario in-game where some villain is terrorizing a town, hunting for an NPC. That NPC asks the party to help hide them. A thinking character might suggest betraying the NPC, delivering them to the villain to save the rest of the town. Meanwhile, a feeling character might be moved by the NPC's story and want to protect them. Identifying where your character falls on each of the 4 Myers-Briggs pairs will give you a short, easy list to go down to figure out how they would respond to any given scenario. Also, before it comes up in the comments, I just want to address attributes real quick. I'm sure there will be people telling me that you should base your personality on those. And I'm not saying that you can't or shouldn't incorporate things like your character's intelligence or wisdom or charisma scores into their personality. But remember that you can apply that in a lot of different ways. For example, a character with high charisma might be very charming, or they might be very intimidating or very persuasive. High charisma just means strong force of personality. You shouldn't feel married to the idea that any character with high intelligence has to behave like Sherlock or Dr. House. There are a lot of ways that intelligence can manifest itself in a personality.
Steal a personality.
This method is, in some ways, similar to the
Haven't
previous
we,
one because
been
it
talking
too
about that
provides
pretty
you with a sort of an
extensively.
easy template. But if
Yep.
personality tests and categories are hard for you to picture or wrap your brain around, this method might be easier for you. And that method is steal. Just straight up lift an existing character or even a person you know. If you took, say, April Ludgate from Parks and Rec and transposed her into a D&D game, that's already something new. That is no longer April Ludgate. If you don't quote her lines or use the same name, most people probably wouldn't even notice. And as you played this character, she would take on a life of her own and develop her own traits based on her experiences in the game. Sometimes I'll do, like, stealing light. I'll come up with a character and then I'll fill in the gaps in their personality with another character. So maybe I'll design a half-orc fighter who's kind of gruff, and anywhere there's a gap in her personality, something that I don't know how she would think or how she would act, I'll just think, what would Rosa Diaz from Brooklyn Nine-Nine do? So the fighter isn't Rosa Diaz, but I use Rosa to inform the type of personality that I want her to have. You can also complicate this method by stealing bits and pieces from multiple characters and just mashing them together. For example, if you take April Ludgate's antisocial nature and love of animals and combine it with Elwood's goal-oriented determination, you might end up with a confident people hater who would burn down a whole town to save a litter of kittens. That's an extreme example, obviously, but the important thing is that the extreme character we
wouldn't?
just created isn't really much like April or Elle. She would be her own totally unique person. You can also borrow a personality from a real-life person. This could result in a subtler, more believable character, which may or may not be what you're going for. What I love about using a real personality is that often people you know in real life will do things that you don't necessarily understand or that you wouldn't do. This is a great opportunity to interrogate why they do those things. Just an exercise in putting yourself into someone else's shoes and trying to see a new perspective. Not only is it great for developing interesting characters, but it also makes you more empathetic. So, bonus. I know a lot of us have a gut reaction to stealing as being wrong, and I think it's important to remember why stealing is wrong and why that doesn't really apply here. Unless you're streaming your D&D game or something, you really don't need to worry about intellectual property or copyright or whatever. If you want to just straight up play Daenerys Targaryen in a D&D game, you can. You're not breaking any laws, any more than you would be if you ran around in your backyard pretending to be Daenerys. You are playing for fun, so steal away. There they are, 3 methods that you can use to develop unique personalities for your characters. Like,
All right. So,
You know what they say, it's not stealing as long as for fun.
I always tend to quote Mark Twain when it comes to this. Mark Twain famously said, all ideas are secondhand. Is that we take what we have from our experience and then we just use that to inform the things that we create. And most
And
specifically,
essentially, it's all alright.
Mhm. Most specifically, he was saying this about Helen Keller. Is that some people just kind of tended to doubt that Helen Keller actually had written her own book because they used concepts that were derived that had already exist, which is what led Mark Twain to make that quotation. But just to point out the fact that we are human beings, we live in a society. We only can create things based on our own types of experiences.
Yes, we're humans, we're not machines, we have our limits.
Mm-hmm.
And even so, the computers are still pretty ass.
Mm-hmm. And so, we did have some reading articles to go through on this, but I think, we're running a little light on time, first of all, but it's also just more important to actually compartmentalize all of these concepts that we have into one
Like,
basic
comparing
concept.
personality to our characters' personalities.
Hmm. So, this is a character that was recently created by Mimi. And so his
Yes.
name is Maxi. And so, if you just want to uh, give us a little bit of an overview about what his personality is.
Alright, so Maxie is pretty much someone who would be pretty childish, be one to hold kind of a grudge, pretty impulsive and manipulative.
Hmm. Well, that's personality, but so that's we'll go slightly more into backstory. Talk about why he has a tendency to be that way.
Well, mainly because he's a homunculus. He was created artificially using magic, and he never really had an experience like, other like living things would while growing up, of which he was pretty much overseen by like a cat person wizard named a Moonstone.
Hmm.
On before he was oh so subsequently killed, allowing Maxie to just straight up leave.
Hmm. And
And
so
as a result, he what? Wait, what?
I'm trying to remember whether or not we actually did this during the stream that we talked about a significant amount of the world building here.
Yes, yes, we
I,
have.
I believe that was one of the writing the RPG shows.
Yes, that is correct.
Hmm.
I still hope that we can be able to do that campaign one day, like as a game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Um,
Yay!
but this is to bring up is that we already have a timeline of what Maxi is going to end up doing in that narrative. But I don't know, not necessarily need to go back into
Yes,
that.
however, I would probably change that up so it wouldn't be
Hmm.
like, okay, there's a time of events of what's gonna happen. Like, like what was said earlier, base things off concepts,
Hmm.
not events.
Precisely. And so, as far as character design is concerned, is that I already know where you had gotten some of the basic 10 posts of this. It's from the
Yes, I have.
character Marks from Kirby.
That
Um,
is correct.
mhm. And it just has a tendency. Well, Marks was a character who tricked Kirby into going after an ancient treasure, but only it was a sacred object that would allow him to um, possess his own power.
Well, exactly. It was to summon this, this god-like being, only for Marks to like steal Kirby's wish to just like take over the entire planet for seemingly no reason.
Hmm. And that is also a concept that's derivative of some other Japanese written video games. Most particularly if it was Kefka in Final Fantasy VI.
And by the way, did you? A little fun fact is that colorophobia is non-existent in Japan,
Mm,
so they were pretty surprised when like a game that they had like a clown-based character or on Go to America, they were pretty shocked to see that people over there had thought that the design of the character was a little scary.
hmm. So it's really that somebody was actually looking at a Western concept, and they had used that in order to create the character of Kefka. Without realizing that there was a certain hang up when it comes to all that.
Yeah, I remember like very I know like a few years back when Smash Ultimate like DLC fighters were still coming out that Sakura Masahiro Sakurai himself was playing while fighting Marks, like talking about him, say I wanted to make him creepier, but I couldn't because of the age rating,
Hmm.
which I think they actually accomplished in the sequel to this, like Kirby Superstar Deluxe.
Hmm. So
If
Sakurai
not
just
one
got
of
to go
the
back
most
into that.
monumental feats of you know, the best sort of example of a secret boss
Hmm.
and a character actually being very scary without the need of the things like creepypasta esque tropes, hopes to try to get themselves off the ground.
Hmm. So probably a good question at this point would be, um, having based this on an original concept, but also having developed a certain amount of originality in the character's concept as well. What did you do in order to marry those two basic ideas? Is that
Well, a big thing that aided it was Marx overall as an already established character did not have a lot of things about him.
Mhm,
The most there was he liked to eat, and he was a friend to another character, or that would eventually betray Kirby as well. But that's it.
mhm.
So I was pretty much able to fill as much as I want with whatever I wanted, which would pretty much fit what I felt that he probably would have as some kind of little a brat.
Mhm.
And pretty much
Putting
the fact
more.
that he manipulates others with the fact that he doesn't look like a bad guy. He's just a cute little thing. Like who expects something like that to be dangerous?
Mhm.
It's like sort of an evil Kirby in that sort of sense, right?
Yeah, precisely. And Sakurai is just an individual, just tries to marry cuteness with a lot of strange existential, just a
Cosmic horror.
theming. Well, yeah, but he wants it to be theming. He never actually puts it into the center of their characters, which is something that you were actually trying to do.
Yes. Yes, I decided to take that and make it somewhat more focused on that while still maintaining the cuteness. Decided to kind of reverse the things a bit.
Hmm. So talking about the story and the way he tends to go through it is eventually it's an individual who realizes that he's possessed by one of the elder gods and mostly causes mischief, uh, tumbleweeding into actual distress as a result of his association with that god.
Yeah, pretty much at the start, he thinks that this is just his imaginary friend who uh, is a little weird, but still his best friend, and what
Hmm.
he says is his only friend. And but yeah, in reality, this is this just straight up this universe is god of chaos and power that caused so much damage with the god of order since they would fight all the time that they had to be locked in their own separate star.
Hmm. So you get the sense that if things happened a little bit differently, he would have been a lot more peaceful.
Exactly, he would have the capacity he wouldn't be a complete goody two shoes, but overall he wouldn't want to be out of his way to be a bad individual. He pretty much only wants one thing: his pretty much adopted brother back. He wants his brother back.
Hmm. And that is basically ironically what makes him you know create the chaos that he was destined to create.
Yep, pretty much cementing that. Yeah, from the absolute moment that he took his first breath of life, he was destined and to be the inheritor of this soul of the god of chaos.
Hmm.
Even though they're both sort of inhabiting the same thing,
Hmm.
which causes a lot of complications.
I also just have to say that this is really good art.
Yeah, Delta Muse made it.
Delta Muse had made it. Delta Muse, who's been a person who's been associated with Mimi's channel for a very long time.
Yep, made a lot of art for me. May make some art for us. Probably gonna ask him to make some more art soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, as you can see here, with the concept of a race of homunculi, being raised, somewhat basing that off the concept of mutants from Marvel, is that a homunculus never really comes out perfect. There's always something, quote unquote, wrong with them. Like with Maxie here, pretty much his arms and he has a tail that are pretty much composed of gold and look way more reptilian-like than anything else.
Hmm.
Something that you'd probably the arms pretty much something you'd find on a theropod dinosaur or something like that.
Hmm. All right, so that is Maxie. Is that a character that we know from developing it in an earlier episode, and a little just a good example of how a lot of the tricks that we learned in the 4 previous YouTube videos is deployed when you're creating a TTRPG character.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, so what did
We've
we
also
learn?
shown examples of our own characters along the way.
Mm-hmm. So, what did we learn tonight?
So, what we've learned today is that retelling takes a lot of thought and effort, and that includes pretty much everything that happens to the front and the back. Heck, but whether your backstory is pretty much a nobody who lived on a farm, someone who wanted to bang a dragon, or simply he Bruce Wayne himself, sometimes we just have to ask why. Good night, everyone.
Okay, yeah, that's a very good way to end that up. So, thank you everybody once again for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks. I came up with that on the spot.
Yep, it's TTRPG and sometimes why
And
podcast.
sometimes why.
All right, so we're gonna take a moment. We're gonna rate another channel. Let's see who would
Yep,
we like
that's
to
right.
pay a visit to. Ash K9, Queen Pip is on. Crimbo is on. Is that we rated him very recently.
Yep, we have indeed.
Yeah, so let's go ahead. Oh, okay, right now, let's go ahead and go over to Eldritch Grandpa. Right now, they're in the middle of doing a reverse donathon. Is that time will be taken off the clock every time somebody gives a donation to the donathon. And they need to do it at the moment because they're going to need to leave a difficult home situation. So go ahead and give them a watch. Try to make a donation if your finances will allow. But in the meantime,
and wish him a good day most of all. Oh, and anyway, I'm Cubate, and this has been the main host of this show. Oh, Brainy. Don't forget BRAINY means smart. Nothing's too difficult if you use your head. And also, yeah, I'm pretty much a bug. Good night.
All right, have a good night, everybody. Thank you very much for watching.
Yep. Good night, everybody.